After my mom died, my dad relied on her parents for 3 years to take care of me. I was 15 years old when mom died. They would pick me up at 7 a.m. from dad's house and take me to their house, and dad would pick me up at 8 p.m. after he was finished with work and errands. They were more like parents to me than he was. He worked 6 days a week, and typically most Sundays I spent at least 4 or 5 hours with them too. They took me to my first day of school, picked me up early if I was sick, and they were there when I was sick. My earliest memories are of my time with them. I don't really remember Dad from back then. This changed when my dad met Beth. One minute it was me going to my grandparents every day, and then Beth lived with us, and suddenly I was home with her instead. My dad and my grandparents fought about it a lot, and he ended up telling me when I was 7 that I wasn't going to see them anymore, and he and Beth were getting married. A month before the wedding, I was sitting in front of a judge and being asked questions about my dad, my grandparents, and other things. The judge was nice. I don't remember a lot of our talk, but afterward, I did get to see my grandparents again. My dad wasn't happy. I was 10 when my grandparents admitted they had to take Dad to court to see me again. My dad hates that I see my grandparents as much as I do. 3 days a month, 1 overnight a month, for 4, and for a day around my birthday and Christmas. He hates that I leave my half-siblings behind to go and see them. There are times he has talked about going back to court and has asked me if I would say I don't like going without my siblings, and I always tell him I wouldn't say that. Beth hates my grandparents too, but for a different reason. She blames them for me rejecting a closer relationship with her because they never allowed me to feel like I didn't have a mom. And I do feel that way, kind of. It's hard to describe. I know she's not here. I can't speak to her, but I still don't feel motherless. I don't want to have that kind of relationship with Beth, and it upsets her. I don't think it's fair for her to want that so badly because I'm sure she'd hate to be forgotten by my half-siblings. So I don't like her much for that. My dad complains more about my grandparents now than he did when I was younger. My half-siblings are old enough to know I go to my grandparents and they can't come. He also knows I prefer being with my grandparents, and he hates it. Beth's parents and siblings and their spouses were at our house Saturday night for a dinner party, and Dad was complaining about my grandparents to them, and everyone was acting like my grandparents were bad people for taking Dad to court and for not letting me forget my mom. Dad said during the party that he'll never understand why I want to go there so badly still. I said I would rather live with my grandparents than him. Everyone went quiet, and Dad made me go to my room. He was so mad yesterday, and he told me I should know better than to try and humiliate him like that. Am I the antagonist? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, not the jerk. Talk to your grandparents and see if they will file for custody. You are at an age where the judge will let you decide what you want. Document these instances from your dad and stepmom. The court will get you your own attorney so they can help you. Just ask your grandparents. I hope you feel the love you need from your grandparents. All kids should enjoy the feeling of being loved and safe. Good luck. Comment 2, not the jerk. Your dad had his reasons to keep you with your grandparents initially, but it's very selfish of him to try to keep you away from them just because his personal relationship with them isn't good anymore. I'm glad your grandparents made sure you don't notice your mother's absence. It means they took really good care of you. Now, for the update. A few days after that dinner party, I got a call from my grandparents. I was super nervous when I saw their names pop up on my phone, but it was all good stuff. They wanted to invite me over for Thanksgiving dinner, which I was honestly super stoked about. So of course, I told my dad, thinking he'd be just as excited as I was. But nope, he shot that down real quick. He told me that he and Beth were hosting a dinner for my half-siblings, and there was no way I could go to my grandparents. I mean, seriously, it was like a huge insult. I told him I was going either way, and that's when things got a little heated. He started going off about how I needed to prioritize being with family, which is kind of rich coming from him. I didn't even let him finish his little speech. I just grabbed my stuff and headed out. The drive to my grandparents place was honestly therapeutic. I cranked up the music and just let it all out, singing along like nobody was watching. When I pulled up to their house, all my stress just melted away. They were so happy to see me, and it felt like all my problems just disappeared for a while. I mean, I know this is a Thanksgiving dinner, but the real highlight for me was just helping them out in the kitchen. I was chopping veggies and setting the table, and it felt so good to be part of something normal for a change. We were all laughing and joking around, and it was just nice. Dinner was a blast, too. I got to share stories about my mom, and seeing my grandparents smile just made me so happy. They told me how proud they were of me, and that they'd always be there for me, no matter what. After dinner, we cleaned up and just reminisced about old family memories, and it felt so good to just be around people who actually cared. I found this old photo album, and I was flipping through it, reliving all those happy times we had together. It was like a trip down memory lane, and I needed that so much. The next week, my dad confronted me about skipping his dinner, and he was not happy. He accused me of choosing my grandparents over him and Beth, and I just stood my ground. I told him my relationship with my grandparents was important to me, and he couldn't just come in and try to destroy that. He started getting louder, and Beth jumped in, insisting I should be prioritizing family. What even is family to them? He then just brushed off my feelings and told me to stop being a drama queen, which only made me more mad. I told him I wanted to spend more time with my grandparents, and that's when he really lost it. He started yelling about how I was a teenager and needed to do what he said, and I just couldn't take it. I left the room feeling so frustrated. A few days later, I got a text from my grandparents inviting me over for Christmas. I was pumped. I told my dad about it, and he tried to argue, saying I should spend it with him and Beth, but I stood my ground. I told him I had the right to choose where I spent my holidays, and if I wanted to be with my grandparents, that's what I was going to do. So, on Christmas Day, I drove over to their house, and let me tell you, it was so festive. They had all these decorations up, and it just felt so warm and welcoming. I helped them cook a bunch of traditional dishes, and I even tried my hand at making some of my mom's famous recipes. It was a little emotional, but in a good way. Dinner was amazing. After we ate, I got to open my gifts from them, and they really did great this year. They even got me this special keepsake that belonged to my mom, and it made me tear up a little. The best surprise of all was when my aunt showed up with news about my mom's side of the family. She told me there was a family reunion planned for the summer and invited me to join. I was so excited to hear that, and it felt like a little piece of my mom was still with us. After the holidays, my dad tried to reach out to me. He suggested we have a family dinner to mend things, and while I thought about it, I ultimately declined. I just wanted to focus on my relationship with my grandparents and not let his drama pull me back in. Beth has been more and more unhappy since all this started, and it's made things at home even worse. But honestly, I don't even care at this point. I've learned to navigate the family dynamics and stand firm in my choices. I'm not going to let anyone make me feel bad about wanting to spend time with people who actually love me. Edit. I want to clarify that my dad and I don't have a bad history. He used to be great before Beth came along. I understand his frustration with my grandparents wanting more time with me. His marriage with Beth has been rocky, and my relationship with my grandparents only adds to that. I'm just trying to maintain my bond with my mom's side. Am I the idiot for calling out my husband for charging me an ATM fee when I lost my wallet? Me, a 36-year-old female, and my husband, a 37-year-old male, went to the beach last weekend and my wallet disappeared. I don't know if it was stolen or if I dropped it, but either way, it disappeared with all of my credit cards, ID, and other items. We live in Japan, so I still had some money charged to my phone, which I used throughout the week to go get my residency card replaced. I have to take a train and bus, which costs money, and I have been living on 100 yen cup noodles. When I went to get my My Number card replaced, which is a type of social security card here in Japan, I was told it costs money, so I wanted to go later when I got my cash card or a credit card back, and I could do so with my own money. But when I told my husband this, He insisted I do it immediately and said he would lend me the money to do so. I told him I could just wait and do it later when I had access to my money again, but he came to meet me and lent me 10,000 yen that he withdrew from a nearby ATM. I took the money, thanked him, and assured him I would return it as soon as possible. Fast forward, and my cash card arrived along with 2 of my credit cards. We went out for lunch today, and he went to pay, so I asked him how much I owed him for my half. He told me not to worry because he is tallying it up in the entry space on our line chat. He puts the money there, like 10,000 plus 600 plus 250, 1,500, without sending it to keep a tally. I don't mind that he is keeping the tally, but when I asked about the 250, he said it's for the ATM charge for the 10,000 yen he lent me. I don't mind paying that, and I understand that it is expensive, but I was very surprised he was counting that closely and told him I would never think of charging someone for the ATM fee to borrow money. I insisted they borrow. By the way, I have never borrowed money from him before, and this is after years of me paying for things for both of us and his half of meals, and him saying he would pay me back later, ultimately buying me a beer or something here and there, and saying, just take 300 yen off of what I owe you. He does acknowledge this debt and pays it back in this way, though. I have never considered factoring tax into the things I pay for him or anything, and I cannot imagine a relationship where I would do something like that. Anyway, when I was surprised, I asked, "You're actually charging me that?" And he got upset, saying, "Because ATMs are expensive. It's not about you, it's about them." So I said that of course I will pay him, but I think if I ever needed to borrow money again, I wouldn't ask him. He got angry at me and stormed off, leaving me in the street by myself. Am I the jerk here? To add, thanks for the many comments and very insightful opinions. Up until my husband, I had never been in a relationship longer than a year, and I had no idea that this dynamic was unusual in a relationship like ours. I suggested the idea of a joint bank account that we put some money into each month for our home and life, and he seemed very open to the idea. It's not combining our full finances, as seems to be normal from the comments, but I hope this will be a very good step in the right direction. Thank you for all of your helpful advice. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I'm more concerned that you're living on cup noodles while you don't have a card. Is your husband having full meals while you eat these? This doesn't sound like a healthy way to manage money in a marriage. Comment 2. Not the jerk, but he got angry at me and stormed off, leaving me in the street by myself. Have some self-respect, please. Never come back to a man who left you in the street by yourself. Never. Now, for the update, I'm back again with more updates about my marriage and drama. So, a few months have passed since the argument about shared expenses. To recap, my husband and I opened a joint bank account for shared expenses. We agreed to split household bills and groceries from that account. Honestly, it's been a big change. I noticed he's been more careful about spending since we decided on this. I think it's made him more aware of where the money is going, and I appreciate that. A while back, we went to a family barbecue at my parents' house. They were so excited to see us, and my mom had prepared a huge meal. I knew we were going to eat well, and we did. During dinner, my dad asked about our future plans. Out of nowhere, my husband jokingly mentioned that we were saving for a house. It totally caught me off guard. We hadn't really had that conversation yet, at least not to the point where we were actually saving for one. Right after that, my sister announced that she was pregnant, and the conversation shifted to kids. The timing was interesting, considering what my husband just said. He laughed and mentioned that we were focusing on our careers for now. It was a little awkward because my parents were super happy about my sister's news, and I felt like I was just sitting there waiting for my turn to be celebrated. After dinner, I overheard my mom talking to my sister in the other room. She said something about being worried about my relationship. I didn't hear everything, but that was enough to make me confront her later. I asked her why she was worried, and she insisted that she was just concerned and wanted the best for me. I got a little defensive. I told her that everything was fine and that there was no need to worry. Later that week, my husband and I went out for a date night at this popular sushi restaurant. We were having a good time until he brought up the idea of traveling to visit his family abroad. I knew that it was something he wanted to do, but I just wasn't sure about it. He got frustrated with me for not being on board right away. He said it was a family obligation, and I couldn't argue with that. We ended up arguing about priorities and expectations. I suggested that we make a budget together for future trips, and he agreed, but he seemed a bit dismissive about the whole idea. A few days later, I got an unexpected phone call from my sister. She told me that she had a medical issue and needed support. I rushed to help her, putting my own plans on hold. When I told my husband, he wasn't happy about the sudden change in plans. We had another tense discussion about responsibilities and support. He accused me of prioritizing my family over our own, which really upset me. We decided to take a break from discussing serious topics for a while, or at least until we calmed down. Things got a little more complicated at a family gathering for my birthday. My dad asked about our travel plans, and that led to another argument. I could see the frustration on my husband's face, and I felt it too. We agreed to sit down and discuss our goals together. It was something we had been meaning to do, but we just kept putting it off. During that conversation, he mentioned feeling pressure from both sides of the family. I understood where he was coming from, but I also felt like we needed to prioritize our own relationship and our own goals first. It's been a journey, and we're still working on a lot of things. Edit. A lot of people were curious about how my husband and I managed our finances before opening the joint account. I used to handle most of the household expenses because I earned more. However, my husband always contributed in different ways like cooking and cleaning. I thought that was fair at the time. After the argument about the ATM fee, we realized we needed a clearer system. We opened a joint account for shared expenses and kept our personal accounts separate. It has worked well so far, making us both more aware of our spending. We'll see how things go from here. Am I the idiot for suggesting a new baby name and causing my sister's boyfriend to lose his mind? My sister, a 19-year-old female, announced to the family that she and her boyfriend were pregnant a few months ago. She immediately followed it up with the names she had chosen: Tyler if it was a boy after the father, or Savory if it was a girl, pronounced Savory. Apparently, she liked the name Avery, but wanted to make it unique, hence the extra letter. Obviously, this is a terrible name for a baby, and I politely asked if they were considering any other names. She said no, that they had already decided. My sister and I aren't really close, so I decided to let it be and congratulated her. A while later, my sister announced that they were definitely having a girl and that little Savory was healthy so far. At this point, I had decided to become more involved with my sister since this was going to be my first niece or nephew. But I couldn't stop thinking about the poor kid getting teased for her name. My sister has untreated borderline personality disorder, and any direct challenge to her decisions always escalates to a huge blowout, so I had to play my cards carefully. I got her a specific baby name book from my mom, the very same book our mom had gotten both of our names from. She loved this gift, and we spent all night eating snacks and going through it. That night, I opened up about my concerns for the name she had chosen and the bullying that might come from it, which she was receptive to because we had both been bullied in school. Over the next few weeks, I said things like, "Oh, this would be a cute name," or "I saw the coolest list of names on Pinterest." My sister loved some of the names, and finally, after all of that, she announced that she had settled on the name Margot instead, taken from the baby name book. I was overjoyed at having saved my niece from a life of being named the way someone would describe a steak. Shortly afterward, I got a text from my sister's boyfriend, who I didn't really know at all because he was never home when I was there, calling me all sorts of terrible things for getting involved in his family. I asked what he was talking about, and he continued to cuss me out because he chose the name Savory and I had no right to change it. I pointed out that I was only interested in the well-being of my niece and that my sister was my family, so I had a right to an opinion. This man had the nerve to tell me that I was an idiot, that I didn't know anything about family since I was still single, despite being older than both of them. I pointed out that I clearly wasn't the dumbest one in the conversation, since I didn't try to name my daughter after a literal piece of meat. Now my sister is angry at me for getting involved and calling her boyfriend stupid, even though he said much more hurtful things in his text to me. Am I the jerk? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Not the jerk. A girl being named Savory will get some double takes and a few jokes, but when the teenage years arrive and beyond, she is going to get sexually harassed over it. You've done all you can within the bounds of reason. You probably won't have that much of a relationship with the niece now. That sucks more than usual because this poor kid is going to have difficult parents. Comment 2. Not the jerk. You just gave her a book and offered opinions. She chose the name. She didn't have to. She could have kept the original name. The original name, though, is bad. It sounds like the kid is some kind of food, and kids will be relentless in teasing her. Now, for the update. The day after the fight, my sister texted me to meet at our parents' house for dinner. I was like, uh-oh, this can't be good. I tried to think positive, but I was feeling all kinds of anxious. So I showed up a little early to my parents' place to help my mom prepare the food. I figured this was a good way to diffuse any bad vibes that might be floating around. We made some spaghetti and meatballs, my dad's favorite. I was cracking jokes and trying to keep things light, but inside I was super nervous. My mom was a bit quiet, but appreciated me being there, I think. Then my sister walked in with her boyfriend, and let me tell you, the atmosphere just went straight downhill. It was super tense. The boyfriend totally ignored me, just walked past me like I wasn't even there. He went straight to my sister, whispering sweet stuff in her ear and making her laugh. Meanwhile, I felt like I was in a bad sitcom where the main character is just a forgotten prop. So, dinner started, and I couldn't help but notice my sister was avoiding eye contact with me the entire time. I mean, we used to be so close, and now it's like I'm some sort of outcast in her eyes. My dad tried his best to lighten the mood, cracking jokes here and there, but the boyfriend was having none of it. He shot down every attempt with these short, snarky remarks that just made the whole thing feel even more awkward. When the subject of baby names came up, the boyfriend had the nerve to smugly mention how he picked the name Savory. I felt this surge of annoyance, but I kept my mouth shut, focusing on the food like it was the last meal or something. My sister then chimed in, saying she loved the name Margot, and that's when the boyfriend just flipped out. He started ranting about how I ruined everything. I was just stunned, sitting there like a deer in headlights when my mom quickly intervened, saying, "Can we please just focus on the food?" After dinner, the boyfriend pulled me aside, accusing me of sabotaging his relationship with my sister. I was like, dude, I'm just trying to look out for my niece here. But no, he had to escalate it. My sister overheard this and just stormed out, boyfriend in tow, leaving me standing there like an idiot. A few days later, my mom called me saying my sister was upset and wanted to have a family gathering soon. I agreed, thinking maybe we could all sit down and talk this out like adults. Spoiler alert, not a chance. At the family gathering, I noticed my sister was more distant than ever, almost like she was doing everything to avoid me. The boyfriend was in rare form too, making snide comments left and right, trying to belittle me in front of the fam. During a game night, I figured, what the heck, let's try talking to my sister. I brought up baby name suggestions again, but this time I tried to be all fun and playful about it. She laughed and said she appreciated the support, but then the boyfriend had to butt in, telling her to ignore me. I just snapped back at him, saying, "Family should come first, you jerk." And that led to a heated argument. My sister got visibly upset and left the room, followed by her ever-so-charming boyfriend. I was left feeling like a total outcast. So, I took a break from the gathering and stepped outside for some fresh air. While I was out there, I overheard my sister and the boyfriend arguing about how he was too controlling. He actually had the nerve to call her weak. I couldn't take it anymore, so I stepped back inside. The next day, my sister texted me, asking to meet without the boyfriend. We met at a local coffee shop, and she just opened up, saying she was feeling overwhelmed by the boyfriend's behavior. She finally decided to rethink her relationship with him and said she needed space to figure things out. I was just so relieved to hear that she was finally seeing the light. The following week, I went to a family barbecue, and guess who showed up? My sister, all by herself and without the boyfriend. She thanked me for being there for her and mentioned that she had a plan. I was all ears, just hoping it was a good one. A week later, I heard that my sister had officially ended things with the boyfriend after a serious talk, and she announced she was changing the baby's name back to Margot. Finally, the whole family celebrated the name change, and it felt like a huge weight had been lifted off all our shoulders. I decided to take a trip to visit some friends because honestly, I needed a break from all this drama. Then came the last update. I was sitting there, sipping my coffee, and my sister sent me a text with a picture of a baby onesie that had the name Margot embroidered on it. I just about lost it, in a good way. It felt like all the craziness was finally leading to something beautiful, and I couldn't be happier for my sister and my niece. Edit. After the dinner at my parents' house, I texted my sister to apologize for any misunderstandings and told her I only wanted the best for her daughter. She responded with a message saying she felt pressure from her boyfriend to name the baby Savory and needed time to think. She eventually met me at a coffee shop, expressed her desire to change the name back, and ultimately did so after ending her relationship with the boyfriend. Now, she feels happier and more at peace. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.